Montage in Hollywood. In Hollywood movies, montage has come to be defined as a way to succinctly deliver or sum up a lot of information and can be used to inform, entice, amuse, and always to advance the story. Right from the early 30s, montage was used in Hollywood films to condense the time of transportation across long distances. Fascinated by Lev Kuleshov and the Soviet montage theory, Alfred Hitchcock adapted the theory to create montages that progressed his story. In Psycho, he combined footages of Janet Leigh driving deteriorating road conditions through the day into night and audio from events that happened prior in time. In 3 minutes, he condensed an incredible amount of story to set up the film for the audience.
Cassidy, I told you, all that cash.
In 1970s, Francis Ford Coppola used montages to signify a mafia film's violent rise to power in his classic Godfather.
What is that? That I cannot do.
I'll give you anything you ask.
We've known each other many years, but this is the first time you ever came to me for counsel, for help.
Invisible editing. The dominant system of editing handed down from the Hollywood tradition is known as continuity editing. Here the cuts are invisible to produce a seamless visual and narrative experience. In the Hollywood continuity editing system, the angle of the camera axis to the axis of action usually changes more than 30 degrees between two shots. For example, in a conversation scene rendered as a series of shots or reverse shots, the 180-degree line is not usually crossed unless the transition is smoothened by a point of view shot or a re-establishing shot. In the basics of invisible editing, it is better for the cuts to be transparent, that is, they must go unnoticed by the average viewer. In making any cut or transition from one shot to another, there is a risk of breaking audience concentration and subtly pulling attention away from the story or subject matter. When cuts or transitions are motivated by the content they are watching, they go unnoticed. For example, if someone glances to one side during a dramatic scene on screen, we can use that as a motivation to cut to whatever has caught the actor's attention. If we hear a door open or someone calls out from off camera, we generally expect to show a shot of whoever it is. If someone picks up a strange object to examine it, it's natural to cut to an insert shot of the object. If cuts are prompted by action, that action will divert attention from the physical cut, making the transition more fluid. Small jump cuts are also less noticeable because viewers are caught up in the action. If a man is getting out of a chair, you can cut at the midpoint of the action. In this case, some of the action will be included in both shots. In cutting, keep the 30-degree rule in mind. Editing for single camera production requires a great attention to detail. Not only should the relative position of feet or hands in both shots match, but also the general energy level of voices and movements. There is also the need to make sure nothing like hair, clothing, or the placement of props has changed in the scene, and that the actor is doing the exact same thing in exactly the same way in both shots. An editor can use distractions in the scene to cover up slight mismatches in actions that inevitably arise in single camera production. An editor knows that when someone in a scene is talking, attention is generally focused on the person's mouth or eyes, and a viewer will tend to miss inconsistencies in other parts of the scene. Or as we have seen, scenes can be added to divert attention. Remember the role that insert shots and cutaways can play in covering up jump cuts. Coming back to montages, the message inherent to some montage could be replaced by simple text cards. However, this alternative is far less exciting and stimulating, not to say far less cinematic. A good example of this is Rocky's famous training montage. The minute training session of the protagonist can be summarized by a title card reading, "After weeks of training, Rocky improved his stamina and perfected his boxing skills." But which one do you think is more cinematic? Which one would make you have goosebumps? Montage editing rules. The rules for editing a montage are just the same as for editing anything else. Each cut should be motivated, it must have a purpose, and must advance the story you're telling. How you cut a montage scene is similar to how you cut an action scene in some ways. In both types of scenes, the visual drive the action, flow, and storytelling. However, cutting a montage differs from cutting action in three major ways. First, action scenes tell a story linearly with shots from the same time and place. Conversely, montage scenes can pull footage from any place, cities, countries, or even planets, or time, prehistoric, modern, future, or fictional. Second, action scenes normally use straight cuts to drive the action. The shots in montage scenes are usually separated by dissolves, wipes, or other types of transitional cuts. Third, montage scenes are rarely silent. Most of them are set to music and may involve wild sound recorded at the scene or deliberate recurring manufactured sounds. Narrations also often replaces dialogue in most of the montage scenes. In most of the cases, montages are edited by laying a track of sample music to begin with as a guide to maintain the rhythm between cuts. It is true that montages has been seen overused and have gained the character of being manipulative and tasteless. But it's sure that if done right, a montage can be engaging, inspiring, and even epic.